A confirmation about the audio once, please. If the audio is clear and available. Thank you. So did you get an opportunity to take a look at the question paper? Any of you? See, it is, Jay, that is why it is referred to as the toughest exam, because that is where it forces you to play with your logic sufficiently. At least for geography, I can say that the question paper and the questions of geography, at least you can say that it is easier than last year. And if you have covered your basics, many of the questions have appeared directly from the PPT, directly from the concepts that we have covered. Questions are appearing directly from that. So if you have had applied your logic, and if you have been careful enough and attentive enough, and by attentive enough means following the discussions regularly and not simply being a mute spectator. So if you have been an attentive candidate, I don't think geography was that tough. Easily you could be able to solve around 60-70% of the questions very easily. Right. Pranay, I was happy with geography questions. Mapping also, yes. So geography in general, and I have been telling you many of the times that in mapping also, if you recall, then those of you who have attended the sessions previously for geography as well, remember I have been constantly harping for the last year that places in news, refer to the places in news, Nagorno-Karabakh, Donbass, all these regions that we have been harping about. UPSC has asked those. And in the case of environment, while you have certain very specific questions which have been asked about the species, there also, if you have attended the environment session which I have conducted, so there I have always guided you in terms of a few of the documentaries. Now, for example, how is it that an orangutan basically uses a stick of wood to get certain amount of food? All those questions are directly asked. So that is why the aspect of it is to always go for widening of the concept from as many different sources, not the books in general. And yes, example of deciduous forest that we had studied yesterday itself. So we had studied about teak and mahua, that was asked directly in geography. P waves, S waves, that was asked directly. Insolation was asked. Now, yesterday, while discussing about the forest, we also discussed about the fact that organic component in the rainforest is very low. That question has been asked directly. So that is where in geography we can be happy about it, that at least what we have covered, UPSC pays significant respect to it. Yes, 2 to 3 questions have appeared directly from yesterday's discussion. Right. And this year, one thing that you will find is that agriculture has not been asked. So the chances are, if agriculture has not been asked, then chances are that next year UPSC might double down on it, or in this year's mains, you will find significant portion from agriculture. Right. So I hope that at least for the geography session, right, for the geography session, I hope that you guys would be comparatively pleased, in the sense that as compared to the other subjects, few of the other subjects that we have in geography, you have had significant portions which have been asked directly, and coverage of the class is very much similar to that. Now, for example, in the minerals and resources part, you had one of the portions, one of the questions which was asked from the current affairs. That is, in the last year, you had the discussion, and in the past few months, in fact, you had the discussion of India being forced to import titanium ore. So you had a question which was framed in minerals and mineral distribution about ilmenite and rutile. So there, again, if you have had paid attention that what are the titanium ores, you would get an idea about it, right? So that is why I would request you, all of you, trying to appear for the exam next year or planning to appear for the exam next year, just stick to the basics that we have been covering. Keep an eye out for the current affairs. And when you are taking a look at the current affairs, be explorative in the sense of whenever you come across any new aspect, look at, or any new area, immediately look at the uh, atlas that where that region is situated. And if you follow this simple logic, almost around 30 questions will be solved very easily out of 100, right? And last year the cutoff was 88. We will have a detailed discussion in the evening on our YouTube channel that what will be the projected cutoff. But the cutoff will largely be in that range itself. And that means if you are able to solve 30 questions directly from this, that gives you a very significant advantage, right? So, but also all of you who have studied environment previously or who are studying environment in particular, I would suggest that there has to be a kind of a broadening of spectrum from various documentaries that you come across. And I have listed certain good documentaries that you should watch. For example, Our Planet, for example, Our National Parks. So there you get a lot of idea and a lot of information about it. So you asked question on teak yesterday. Yes. And the same question was there. So yes, that was there. And similarly about Mahua as well. So many questions were there. In case you are interested, so catch us live for the discussion at around 7 p.m., where we'll initiate the discussion and we will have polity discussion first, then we will have economy, then few questions of science and tech, and then we'll go for the discussion of geography and environment and ecology together before going on with the other subjects. So if you are interested in that, please do catch us live in the evening, right? It will be on YouTube, Shubhajit. The YouTube channel for Byju's IAS. We'll have the live discussion at 7 p.m. Now we come to the subject back, and that is the industrial zones, the major industrial regions of the country. Now here, when we talk about the major industrial regions, you will find 6 to 7 of these industrial areas. Now, in almost all of these industrial regions, you will find a particular trend or a characteristic to hold true. For example, if you look at the trends of this industrial zone, so salient features, if you will observe, you will come across various salient features. For example, growth of primary industries, as a base for industrialization. Then availability of cheap labor. Then presence of efficient transportation facilities, right? So these are basically few of the salient features that you will find to be true across the various parts of the country. So be it in the region of, let's say, Mumbai Pune industrial region. Now, in the Mumbai Pune industrial region, you will find the scenario that if, let's say, you have the presence of any particular, initially the industrialization was initiated by the presence of the cotton textile and the cotton textile mills, which were very predominant in that region. Slowly and steadily, with the presence of cotton textile, you also required the presence of coloring agents, chemical dyes, right? So they also started coming up. And once that chemical industry came up, then engineering industry for the manufacturing of equipments also came up. So like that, the entire industrialization happened. Similarly, if you take the case of the Hooghly region, initially you had the primary sector in the form of jute textiles which came up. If you take up the Bangalore, Tamil Nadu region, so in the region around Madurai, you had the silk productivity which started gaining traction, and around that the industrial setup happened. If you take the case of Chota Nagpur region, availability of minerals in that region made mining a kind of a primary activity which was very, very dominant. And in all these areas, you will find that you have had the significant presence or prevalence of cheap labor and good transportation facilities, being able to carry goods from these regions to all across the globe. So these were few of the features which were to be found. Now we will take a look at few of these industrial regions to observe the trend here. So if you take a look at few of them, basically Mumbai Pune industrial region. So Mumbai Pune industrial region, here this is the region around Mumbai, and this is where you have Pune, Nashik. So basically, this region, the industrialization started first of all in Mumbai. And it started with the help of or on the backdrop of the cotton textile industry. As the cotton textile grew, so did the Mumbai industrial region. And as it grew and prospered, eventually, see, after partition, the problem was that majority of these industrially producing areas, or rather majority of the cotton producing areas, they went to Pakistan. And even after that, the Mumbai industrial region, they continued with their cotton textile mills. And then came the coloring agents, the chemicals required. Then eventually came the heavy industries, the electrical industries. And then slowly and steadily, off the coast of Mumbai, that is in the region of Bombay High, you also have oil exploration and extraction, which is carried out. And that automatically means that you have significant amount of petrochemical industries also coming in that area. Now the building of roads through the gaps in the Western Ghats to Pune and Nashik, that has further increased and expanded the industrialization into the nearby regions and the nearby zones as well. Okay, so that is something that you will experience. So this is fully connected with the growth of cotton textile industry in India. Cotton was cultivated in the black soil or has been cultivated typically in the black soil region. Partition of the country meant significant portion went to Pakistan. So here, in addition to cotton, textile and chemical, engineering goods, leather, oil refineries, petrochemicals, synthetic and plastic goods, chemicals, all of them have emerged and have come up in the region of Mumbai. Okay. Then we have the Hooghly industrial region. Now, Hooghly industrial region, here you have major centers. Now, this also started with the development of the first jute textile mill at Rishra way back in 1855. This is where Rishra is situated. So around the time of 1855, that is when you had significant amount of jute mills which opened up. And here River Hooghly, the River Hooghly's flow also provides a kind of an easy transportation facility. So this region developed on the backdrop of jute textile. Again, here also, immediately after independence, significant portion of that jute producing area went to the present day region of Bangladesh, right? But still that region continued to produce jute. And then eventually, even the tea producing regions in the North Bengal and the region of Assam, even for the processing of that tea, the region of, or after the tea was to be processed, then it would be transported to rest of the world. And that is where building of the Haldia port significantly helped. Now Haldia in itself is an industrialized region. Now there you have petroleum refinery coming over in Haldia, which again proves to be a backbone for industrialization. Now in this region, availability of cheap labor is not a problem, because straight from the region of West Bengal also, Assam also, Jharkhand, Bihar, Odisha, you have surplus availability of cheap labor. And connectivity is not an issue as well, because this has got a good connectivity and it is on a port. So basically it has got a connectivity with the rest of the world, and interior and in the internal portion also, the portion of Haldia and Kolkata region in general has got a good connectivity. So the old trading center of late 17th century has developed into the present day industrial hub of Kolkata. And besides navigable rivers, roads and railways, they have provided links for connectivity. Discovery of coal and iron in the Chota Nagpur plateau provided the much needed fuel and the much needed power supply for running the industrial centers. Tea plantations in Assam and northern parts of West Bengal also, they require a processing center. Many of these processing centers, they lie in this region. Now, cheap labor can be found significantly through the densely populated areas of the lower Ganga plains, and location of petroleum refinery at Haldia and construction of Haldia port. They have further augmented the process of industrialization taking place. Then after that, we have the Chota Nagpur industrial region. Vivek, Pakistan or Bangladesh? In which case? In which case, Pakistan or Bangladesh? For cotton producing areas, most of the portions they went over to Pakistan, because please understand, where is it that cotton is produced? Can cotton be, or cotton is generally not produced in the portions of Bangladesh region or the deltaic area. There not much cotton is grown. Okay. Then we have the Chota Nagpur industrial region. Now this Chota Nagpur industrial region is dependent, or its development is based on the presence of minerals that you find in that area. Very, very rich in minerals, the Chota Nagpur area. Along with that, here in the Chota Nagpur region, also you will find surplus availability of cheap labor. There is always that transportation linkage between Bengal and Delhi, and that provides easy transportation. Railway lines are present, highways are present, so it provides easy transportation. Power supply is significantly there. So that is basically where the industrialization happened. So power is available from the dam sites in Damodar Valley. You have the Maithan Dam, one of the bigger dams which have been constructed, and the main dams which have been constructed immediately post independence to control the spate of river Damodar. And you have also had the thermal power stations based on the local coal. So here you will observe the industrial centers around Hazaribagh, Jamshedpur, Daltonganj, Bokaro. These are few of the industrial centers spread all around, right? So that will be spread even in the neighboring areas of West Bengal, even in the areas of Odisha and Jharkhand. Just a moment, please. Okay, just an announcement. So, all of you who have attended the sessions significantly for almost a month and more now, so basically a feedback sheet will be rolled out to you, and accordingly you can fill the feedback sheets, and you should fill the feedback sheets that what has been your experience overall in the session in terms of the content which has been covered and so on, all the various aspects. You would be very well aware of the process. So. Basically it has been a kind of a reminder for you. So the feedback sheets, when they are rolled out to you, please ensure that you fill it up and then you send it back. Okay, I hope that is understood, right? So now these are your industrial centers which you find in the region of Chota Nagpur industrial region. And then after that, we come across one of the very different kind of industrial region. Even though the basic characteristic and basic DNA of industrialization is very same here also. That is the Gurgaon, Delhi, Meerut industrial region. Now here, the development of this industrial region was based upon two simultaneous developments happening across both arms of Delhi. On one side, you had the Delhi Ambala belt. Now that would significantly specialize all the way to the region of Ludhiana. So that was the one which would specialize in textiles. And then you had in the eastern part, the belt extending from the region of Delhi all the way extending into the portion of the region around Ghaziabad, Meerut, and so on. Now these used to be significantly agricultural based or agro based. You had sugar industries and sugar mills present there. So that laid the foundation of industrialization. Then after that came the basic field refineries. Oil refineries which are closer to the market are referred to as field refineries. So you had the development of field refineries in the form of Panipat in the region of Mathura. Now they also brought in subsequent industrialization. Then you had automobile industry, which was set up in the outskirts of Gurgaon. So all of that overall led to the industrialization of the Delhi NCR region. Here also, availability of labor is perpetually present. Cheap labor will always be present. You have migrants coming from all over the country. Transportation is very easy. Delhi is one of the best connected areas in terms of transport infrastructure. If you talk about highways, expressways, connectivity from railways, airways, everything is present in Delhi. So it is overall very convenient. So that is where majority of the industries nowadays you will find are light and market oriented. And here it started with sugar, agricultural implements, textile, glass, chemicals, all of them came. Now, once that region has developed in an industrial manner, software industry is a recent addition in that process. And software industry has basically been a recent addition, which you will find in the outskirts of Noida, in the outskirts of Gurgaon. You will find many such software parks being set up, employing many, many thousands of people. Okay. Now, these industrial regions overall, if you take a look at the map of these industrial regions, observe that these appear as islands of industrialization. Ideally, as a country, what should we want, or what is it that we should desire? The desirability should be that rather than the industrialization restricted here, 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 and here, even in the middle path or the path connecting thereby, there should also be industrialization in that region, isn't it? Only then larger section of population will prosper. Only then will you have equal amount of opportunity to every individual. So that is the purpose for which you have the development of industrial corridors. Now, these industrial corridors, they end up connecting two different industrial areas by very fast mode of transportation. And also, let's suppose you are connecting these two industrial areas. Let's suppose you are connecting these two industrial areas in general, right? Delhi and Mumbai, let's suppose. Now, if you are connecting them with a fast mode of transportation here, and if you manage to provide facilities of electricity, water supply, etc., and easy method and quick method of transportation of goods, maybe the raw materials or the finished product, we can ensure development of industries in the middle region as well, right? So that is the concept of development of an industrial corridor. So when we talk about industrial corridors, they offer a kind of a pathway for development. They end up connecting two different industrial areas, right? So for example, you have the Delhi Mumbai industrial corridor. It is here that you have a dedicated freight corridor which is being established. Freight corridor is what? Freight is what? When we talk about freight in general, it is basically the goods that you carry. So here you have a separate railway line which is being laid for only the movement of the goods train. So that right now, what is it that we experience is that the goods train, the passenger trains, they are moving on the same line. They are utilizing the same railway network. So as a result of that, not only are the passenger trains delayed, but there is no schedule or the timing for the delivery of the goods. And the goods train, they are moving at an extraordinarily slow speed with an average speed of maybe 25 kilometers per hour. So in order to ensure faster movement of goods, you have the establishment of dedicated freight corridors. And along that, you have the Delhi Mumbai Industrial Corridor, which is being developed. You have the Amritsar Kolkata Industrial Corridor, the East West Corridor, which is being developed. Now, here you also have another dedicated freight corridor being developed from the region of Dankuni in Kolkata all the way to the region around Delhi. So, that is basically a dedicated freight corridor there as well. Then you have the Chennai Bangalore industrial corridor. So these are various industrial corridors which seek to ensure a development of that entire region. A question this year in prelims has been framed even from this particular portion that you see in your map right now. If you are following current affairs, or if you are just following this map, that also would have helped you get one question correct in the prelims examination. So that is why this year's prelims examination has been particularly, in a way, insightful for the subject of geography. Yes, you have few of the random questions which will always be there, which is a part and parcel of the examination pattern itself. But that is why I would like to double down on what I have been saying, that please don't end up exploring endless amount of resources. Just stick to the basics. Stick to the basics. Ensure that you revise it so many times that it gets ingrained in your mind. And then when you keep a lookout for the current affairs, you will have much greater benefit. That is why I always will tell you, I will suggest to you a humble suggestion. Think about it as, suppose, let's say, I have had a bit more experience. I have had interacted with in this area for a long time now. So that humble suggestion would be that today, when the sessions get completed, when the portion of geography gets completed, please ensure that you finish the revision process within the next 10 days. That will not take much of a time. Next 10 days, you finish the revision process. And then after that, you will automatically gain the self-confidence that whenever these portions are discussed in current affairs or in newspapers, you'll be able to pay attention to them also. So that is the policy, that is the objective or the method of operation, modus operandi, that I would suggest you to follow. But you guys, and after that, you guys are intelligent, more intelligent than me. So you're free to choose your own path, make your own strategy also. So here is the list of the minerals, the mineral distribution that you will come across that I told you. I'll give you that detailed list. So here you have a list of various minerals and where they are to be found across the parts of the country. Okay. And now we come to the portion of population, settlement, and transportation. Now, this is a particular area which is relevant only for your mains exam. Generally, you won't find the questions coming from it in the prelims other than the portion of transport. And this is driven purely by current affairs. If any new infrastructure has been constructed, let's suppose, if any new infrastructure has come into existence, kindly pay attention to that. If there is a new infrastructure project or a new transportation project being implemented, kindly take a look into that. Okay, so transportation will be asked, or in sometimes is asked in the prelims examination, but purely from the perspective of current affairs. Otherwise, in the mains examination, you get questions from here in the mains examination, and you get questions in the range of, or for example, the problems faced in the urban in India due to developmental pressure. Such kind of very generic question. And I always have maintained, I still maintain that for these kind of questions, it is better to use your own analysis. All of us have been born and brought up in different parts of the country, in different conditions. But being born and brought up in different parts of the country, we are almost exposed to the similar environment. And that similar environment is that you have developmental issues that are faced. You have overpopulation, development of slums, etc., that is experienced. So that is where you need to focus upon those areas that you have experienced around you and then put it to the paper. That will not only make your answer distinct and different from the rest of the people who have just wrote, learned, and ratified what is in the book, it will also add some flavor to your answer, authenticity to your answer, and you will observe necessarily, you will be given and awarded more marks in the mains exam. So here questions such as problems in urban India, rural India, issues of migration, Okay, these are the basic kind of questions which can be framed from here. Okay, so let us initiate the discussion for the portion of population. So when we talk about population of any place, any region, population basically refers to the absolute number of individuals, right, in a given geographic area. So here also we consider, for example, population of India, population of China. So there also it is the population of any particular area that we are talking about. So in a geographic area, in a particular geographic area, what is the number of individuals present? Now, across the globe, we have a very distinct distribution of population. It is not at all homogeneous. It is not at all uniform. Across the globe, you will find that many areas, they are sparsely populated. For example, in the region of Greenland, you won't find population to exist. For example, in the region of Siberia, very few people would be living there. For example, in Western Australia, the desertified region, very few people would be living there. The entire vast expanse of Sahara, very little people would be living there, less number of people would be living there. So that is where population is irregularly distributed. And take, for example, the eastern coastline of China, very densely populated. Northern plains of India, very densely populated. So that is what the population distribution is. It is absolutely uneven, right? So 90% of the world population lives in around 10% of its area only. 90% of the global population, right? And here, if you will observe, this is the region-wise population density and distribution. The largest continent is basically Asia. Asia, being the largest continent, is also the most populated continent across the world. And here, you will observe that it represents close to around 60% of the global population. Then followed by Africa, having 17% of the global population. Then followed by Europe, Latin America, then North America, and Oceania. Look at the density of population on an average in Asia, 146 people per square kilometer. Look at the density of population, let's say, in North America. Oceania basically refers to the region around Australia, New Zealand, Tasmania, etc. That is included in the portion of the Oceania region that you come across. Okay, so that is where the population is significantly unevenly distributed. Even in India, if you observe the distribution of population, you will observe that wherever you have the plain region, in the plain areas, population density is going to be very high. Other here also, wherever you have plain areas, population density is very, very high, because there is a prospect, or there is a possibility to carry out economic activities by agricultural process. So that is where the population density is very high in these cases. Other than that, the industrial areas around, the industrial towns of the country, they will also have high amount of population. Okay, now here, when we talk about the population density, there are certain factors which end up influencing the population density, right? So when we talk about the density or the distribution of population, let us take a look at the factors based upon which people decide whether to live in an area or settle down in an area or not. So it will have various factors, for example, geographical factors. Now, the geographical factors, for instance, they will include availability of water, very important. Water is a life-giving resource. If water is available, people will live in that area. If water is not available, people will not prefer to live in that area. Then climate. People generally prefer not to live in an area where you have extremities of climate, right? So moderation in climate is always something which is welcome, which is desirable. So moderate climate is desirable always. Then, for example, topography. So here again you will observe plains have greater population as compared to hills and plateaus. Then other than that, you also have the factor of fertility of soil. Fertile soil. Wherever you will find the prevalence and the presence of fertile soil, naturally a lot of people will come to live there. Be it the river Nile basin, be it the Amazon basin, be it the Euphrates Tigris basin, be it basically even if you consider, let's say, the Ganges river basin, wherever you will have fertile soil, people will necessarily come there to live. Then you have the economic factors. Now, in terms of the economic factors, here economic opportunities should be there. Economic opportunities. Now, economic opportunities can present themselves anywhere. So, for example, industries, industrial towns, industrial cities and towns. For example, agricultural areas, agricultural areas. Then, for example, coastal regions, right? Wherever people will find an economic incentive or an economic opportunity, people would always prefer to live in that region, to go into that area. Then you have social and cultural factors. That is, where is it that you have a better societal acceptability? Where is it that the society is more open? That is where you'll find greater population to be living in. So, openness in the society, wherever you will find lack of discrimination, cultural similarity, So these are the places where people, they prefer to live. And also, in many of the cases, religious and beliefs, traditional belief system. Okay. So that is where, for example, let's say people will always prefer to live in an area, let's suppose, where there is no caste discrimination, right? Where there is no class discrimination. Class discrimination is not as acute in India as, let's say, in some parts of the world. For example, France. France has got a very acute class discrimination which happens. So that is where people naturally, now there also in France, wherever that class discrimination is very prominent, people don't generally live in that area. So wherever you will have open society, people will always prefer to live in this area. Now, from this slide itself, I hope that if a question arises, if a question is asked that discuss about the factors which determine the distribution of population, I hope that we will have the ability to write even 500 words if required. For all of these, if you start writing even a couple of sentences or 3 sentences and give relevant examples, that will be more than sufficient to fill any answer sheet and any requirement of the question which is asked. So for all this, please understand, it is the normal logical application that where is it, imagine yourself in that place and imagine where is it that you would prefer to live. As simple as that. If you follow that simple a logic, you will get an idea about where the people would live in general. Okay? I hope there is no doubt in this. Then we come to the aspect of population growth. So population growth is basically the change in population of an area in a time, in a given time, the change in population which is experienced, that is referred to as population growth. Now, will the population growth always be positive or can it be positive as well as negative? What do we think? Will the population growth always be positive or can it be both positive as well as negative? Both. Good. Vivek, no, I did not say that class discrimination with Indians in France. No, in France itself, there is class discrimination. Like we have caste discrimination in India, just like that, you have class discrimination based on economy in France. That is what I was referring to. So here, population growth can be both positive as well as negative. If there has been a decline in population, well, there is negative growth. So when we talk about the growth in population, we have the factors of natural growth of population and actual growth of population. So when we say, let's say natural growth of population, natural growth. Natural growth refers to the number of people born in an area and subtract. So number of people born in an area is an addition to the population, but there would have been a significant number of people who would have died in that area also. So that is basically birth rate minus death rate. That gives you an idea about natural growth of population, isn't it? Now, what about the actual growth of population? What do we understand by actual growth? So, in any particular area, let's suppose Mumbai, can we say that the change in population in Mumbai every year is only based upon the number of people being born and the number of people dying? No. Every year, many people from rest of the country would move to Mumbai in order to have a better income. Simultaneously, every year, many people from Mumbai would move to, let's say, Delhi, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Chennai, everywhere else in order to seek better job opportunities as well. Many people would move abroad. So the change in population or the population growth of Mumbai, if you have to calculate, what will it be? It will be birth rate, that is the number of people getting born, birth rate minus death rate plus number of people born, or rather moving in, minus number of people moving out. They can be moving in and moving out either on a temporary basis or for a permanent basis. But nonetheless, it will influence the population of a region. So that is where people moving in and out of an area, that is what is referred to as migration. That is what is referred to as migration. So here, this actual growth of population, can we write it as natural growth of population? This portion is the natural growth plus minus migration. That gives us an idea about the population of any particular area. If there are more people moving out, obviously the population is going to decline. If there are more people coming in, population is going to increase. Okay, so this particular factors are relevant for the population change which is experienced in any part of the world, any part of the planet. So population growth in itself is dependent on the birth, number of deaths which are experienced, and also the migration. Now, what is this migration? So when we talk about migration, it is basically movement of people for a permanent or a semi-permanent basis for various different purposes. It can be for various purposes, but semi-permanent or permanent basis, when people are moving from a region, that is what is migration. Now, a person, let's say, decides to move from somewhere, let's say in West Bengal, to somewhere, let's say Mumbai, right? So that person is moving from West Bengal to, let's say, Mumbai. Now, that individual, when he comes to Mumbai, that individual will be referred to as immigrant. And the same individual, when he was moving away from West Bengal and he has moved away from West Bengal, in there, he would be referred to as an immigrant. Okay, so the place from where you have migrated from, you are an immigrant of that region. The place that you are migrating to, you are an immigrant of that region, right? That is why you would come across the news story of Indian immigrants, right? Indian immigrants who have, let's say, who have gone to Australia, United States, etc., etc. So their issues are oftentimes dealt with in current affairs. So that is where you would come across this term. Now, there must have been certain factors which would not have been conducive enough that an individual has decided to move out of West Bengal. There must have been certain factors. Otherwise, nobody wants to leave their home where you are born. Everybody wants to live in that region itself, what you call as home. So those factors which are at play for forcing an individual to move out, that is what is referred to as push factors. Push factors. That has basically pushed you to move out of West Bengal. Now, those factors which are at play, now that person, let's say when that person has decided that I will move out of Mumbai or West Bengal, now that person could have decided to go anywhere. That person could have gone to Guwahati, that person could have gone to Visakhapatnam, to Hyderabad, to Bangalore, to Delhi, to Chennai, anywhere. But that person decided to move to Mumbai. So there must be certain factors which is present in Mumbai, which has attracted that individual to come to Mumbai. So those factors which are associated, they are referred to as pull factors. Okay, so the place of origin has got the association with push factors, and the place of destination has got the association with pull factors rather. So that is where you have the condition of migration spanning out. Now, here, place of origin, again, here you will have push factors. And here you will have pull factors. Now, what can be these push and pull factors? So here again, let us try to analyze them. You will have geographical factors. For example, in the case of geographical factors, let's suppose you have the condition where you have water. Water is one of those factors. So here, if the water availability declines, people will move out. For example, take the case of Fatehpur Sikri. Fatehpur Sikri was one of the costliest investments, one of the costlier investments made by the Mughals, right? They built that entire sprawling city, which was supposed to be the capital of the Mughals. Now they vacated that entire Fatehpur Sikri region within 70 days because it was found that sustainable water supply could not be attained in that region. So people migrated away. Then, other than that, you will also have the aspect of climate change. Climate change, wherever you have frequent climate changes happening and climate change induced impacts like rise of sea level water, frequent flooding, etc., people tend to move out from that region. And same is the case with natural disasters. Natural disasters. Okay. Then, for example, the other case which can be considered as geographical factor that we have taken a look into here, when we take a look into the distribution of population, we are taking water, climate, topography, and fertile soil. So here also you have the fertility of soil, which declines significantly in a region. That also, but we can consider that under economic opportunities and economic aspect as well. So then we come to the economic angle. So lack of economic opportunities in a region can push a person out. Lack of economic opportunities. Okay, that can push a person out. Then loss of income can happen due to any of the factors that can push a person out. And then you also have socio-cultural factors. So for example, let's suppose in a particular area you have increased amount of social strife which has emerged. For example, Rohingyas in the region of Myanmar, they have been facing increased persecution at the hands of the local militia. So they are oftentimes forced out of that. Then, for example, the Taliban in Afghanistan, they are creating a scenario where many people are forced out. So you have social strife, right? Increased class discrimination. Discrimination. Okay, increased discrimination that is experienced. So these are your socio-cultural impacts. Now, in the pull factors, generally the exact opposite of it is true. People, for example, wherever they will find economic opportunities, they will try to live in that region itself. Wherever, for example, people will come across a scenario that, let's say, in the old age in particular, when people, they generally retire from the active service, they would want to, many of them want to live in their own cultural space, in their own religious spaces where there are shrines. For example, take a look at the cities, holy cities in India like Ajmer, like Varanasi. You will observe a lot of the old age people from across the country, they have come to settle there, right? So that is where even the religious aspect comes into the picture when people decide to move into a new place. So that basically defines the factors which end up influencing migration in any particular area. Now, migration basically can be permanent, semi permanent, right? So, permanent means permanently you are moving from a place. It can also be seasonal in nature. For example, in the region of Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, there you will come across this fact where during the winter season, majority of the people living up in the hills, they will climb down the mountains, they will come down the mountains. Why? In order to get access to sources of income, because high up in the mountains during the winter, everything is covered in snow and you don't have any source of revenue. And then again, when the summer season, the tourism season comes in, they will again climb up the mountains. So it can be seasonal also. Now, this migration can be rural to urban. rural to rural, urban to urban, and it can also be urban to rural, right? For example, in India, one of the biggest cases of urban to rural migration is observed in two situations. One is when people in the urban sectors they retire from the active service. That is when they will migrate from urban to rural. And second is when you will observe that a girl gets married in an urban area, a woman gets married there also. In many of the cases, in many of the parts of the country, the trend still prevails that the woman, she has to leave her house and she has to migrate or move to the rural area or wherever the marriage has happened. So that also sees a kind of a urban to rural migration. Now this is a very interesting map. I want you to take a look into this map and try to understand it a bit. So this basically indicates the regions from where migration is happening. And this will throw a lot of surprises for you. Because when we think about migration, typically the common cultural mentality which has been ingrained is that migrants generally will arrive either from eastern UP, Bihar, Jharkhand, or Odisha. But observe the regions where the migrants are coming from. So here, observe starting with the region of Western Rajasthan, a big supply of migrant laborers and the big source of migrant laborers in the region of Gujarat, Mumbai, and even Delhi. Himachal Pradesh and Uttarakhand, one of the big suppliers of migrant laborers in Punjab and also in the region of Delhi. Punjab itself has got a lot of migrants moving out of the country to Canada, right? It is a kind of a thing which has been stereotyped, but many of them, they are moving to Canada, Australia, or the European region. And there also, by the way, if you are interested, there is a very interesting article which has been which was printed in the print. I hope you are aware of the print, which is run by Shekhar Gupta. So the print had run a very interesting article set about the deindustrialization of Punjab. And there you will find that now nobody is interested in completing their educational degrees. They don't want to complete their educational degrees because obviously studying is something which is laborious, and if you don't get a direct tangible benefit out of it, you are not interested anymore. So many of them not interested in these degrees, they will immediately accumulate all the resource that they have to somehow migrate to Canada or any portion in Europe. And Italy is turning out to be one of those destinations where many of these migrants, they are found to be working as laborers, living in very poor conditions, and they are not given the basic human rights, but they are happy to work there because there again they get to send some money back. And there is, if you are from Punjab or if you have spent some time in Punjab, you will find that there is a kind of a social prestige issue associated with migrating abroad, with living abroad. So that is something that you find increasingly present in Punjab. Then other than that, UP, Haryana, UP, Bihar, as well as northern part of West Bengal, due to lack of economic opportunities. In the region of Bihar also, you have the situation of natural disasters. Frequent natural disasters occur there. But in general, a huge amount of economic loophole, lack of economic development, absolutely. Then coastal Odisha, a big source of migrant labor nowadays. Then here, observe this. Kerala. Ideally, when you think about the state of Kerala, you think about maximum literacy rate. You will have learned it from your childhood days, ever since maybe you were in class first or class two. You would have learned that which is the state with highest literacy rate. It is the state of Kerala. Now here in Kerala, you will observe very high rates of migration. It has not been stereotyped to the extent that it has been in Punjab, but here also you will find a lot of people migrating to Middle Eastern nations to work as healthcare workers, to work as blue-collared employees. Blue-collared employees are basically the ones who work as workers and laborers in the large factories, and they migrate to those particular regions. Why? Because here also you have an absolute lack of the provision of jobs. Availability of jobs is lacking in Kerala. And here, that is something ascribable to the lack of specialization in higher education or secondary education, or let's say graduation studies, etc. That is why majority of the people there, you will find a trend. Majority of the people, they go for the training of paramedical staff, and they go to work as healthcare workers in Middle Eastern nations. So they can always have an opportunity everywhere else in the country also, because Kerala overall churns out large number of healthcare workers. Okay, so this is the aspect of migration. Now, when we talk about Indian population, so we end up measuring Indian population by a decadal exercise. Decadal exercise means carried out every decade, and that is referred to as census. Now, this census exercise is carried out every 10 years. And there we get an idea about the total amount of population in any particular, or in the total country, and also in different states. Now, this census exercise was last carried out in 2011. Before that, it was carried out in 2001. Before that, carried out in 1991. Before that, in 1981, and so on. Right? Now, the census exercise, which was due to be carried out in 2021, has been delayed till the next general elections, and it will be held after the next general elections. So this is the one which has been delayed due to the impact of COVID, and it will be carried out later. But as per the estimates of United Nations, presently we are the most populous country in the world, with a population of close to around 1.4 billion people, and increasing. So that means you have almost 1/6 of the total world population living in India. Out of the total population living in India, 35% of the population is urban, whereas 65% is rural population. So that means what? The problems of rural India, they are still very dominant, and they are the ones which contribute to the problems of the country. Right? Now, the average population density in India is 464 people per square kilometer. Now, overall, if you take a look at the census data, you will observe that Indian population census data can basically be broken into multiple subparts. For example, here, pre-independence era, you will observe that the population would grow almost very, very slow. However, there is one exception. That is year 1921. That is the decade between 1911 and 1921. This is the only decade in the past century or more where Indian population has experienced a decline. Why do you think there was a decline in population? What could be the factor which would have led to the decline in population in the country between 1911 and 1921? All of us who have covered the portion of history. Okay. Bengal famine, yes. Other than that, not Bengal famine, you had famine in the other parts of the country. World War One, okay, very good. You had famine. You had war. Other than that, you also had the first, or the pandemic before this, which occurred in 1918, and that was Spanish flu. Okay, Spanish flu also claimed a lot of lives. So that is where these were the factors which induced a kind of a decline. Now, after this, if you will observe, after 41, that is in the decade immediately after independence, the population grew significantly. And then look at the rate from the 60s onwards. The population has been climbing exponentially all the way till the 90s. The growth has been exponential. So this is the rate, or this is the phase which is referred to as phase of population explosion. Phase of population explosion. And this happens in every society. In every society, whenever you will find or come across a scenario where, let's say, there has been a greater availability of medical resources and more hospitals come up, so automatically people start living for a longer duration, and the number of people born in that area, that continues to increase, so there's a population explosion. Now in India we are experiencing a slight decline in the growth rate of population. That growth rate is still there, population is still increasing, but that rate of growth has declined slightly. So that is something that you observe here. So basically, this all changes in population is something which can be experienced, which can be represented very well and very easily with the help of what we refer to as demographic transition. That is the change in population, that and the behavior of the population, the size of the population, the aspect of the population with the growth of society. Demography is basically the classification of population in terms of, let's say, the quality factors, that is the age category, the sex category, etc., how you literacy category, how you classify the population. So here, everywhere, every society experiences that from a high birth and high death rate, they transition into low birth and low death rate, right, over a period of time. That means in the very initial stage, when the society is rural, agrarian, and illiterate, you will have large number of children. Every family you will observe has 7, 8 children on the minimum, because they are not sure that how many of them will survive to be healthy adults, because the medical facilities are not adequately available, so they are not sure about it. So they will have more kids. And due to lack of medical facilities, many of these kids will not be able to survive. They will die in the process. So that is where, from the rural, agrarian, and illiterate, slowly urban, industrial, and literate society will be created. When you have, at that point of time, you will observe that each of the families, they will have either 1 or 2 kids at max, and there, slowly and steadily, the population will start coming down. So this is something which is represented in the various different stages of the growth of the society by what is referred to as demographic transition theory. It can be represented by a graph. So as per the graph, the growth of the society can be divided, or the phase of the society can be divided into 3 to 4 different stages based upon the amount of development which has been experienced. It can be divided into 3 to 4 different stages. Sometimes in certain research papers, you will also find 5 different stages, but ideally 3 to 4 is more than sufficient. So you have the first stage, second stage, third stage. Now these are the stages of development of society. Fourth stage, stages of development of society, and how that brings about change in population. You have a change in population which is experienced. How does that happen? And how does that pan out? So let us represent, let's say, birth rate by white color. Let's suppose birth rate. So in the initial stages, when you will have the society not being very developed or not at all developed, lack of basic facilities of sanitation, etc., if it will be observed. What do you think will be the birth rate? Birth rate will be very high. Each and every family will have large number of kids. So in the initial stage, when the society doesn't have many facilities and it is poor and backward, birth rate is very high. And there are certain factors behind it. One of the factors is that families, they would prefer to have large number of kids, so that once the kids grow up, first of all, the reason for having large number of kids is so that enough will grow up as healthy individuals, because they are not sure how many of them will survive. Now, after they grow up, basically they want the people, or they want the kids, to be helping them in economic output, to help them earn significantly. That is why in the first stage of the society, when the society is very poor, very backward, people generally tend to prefer to have large number of kids. Right? Now, death rate. Let us represent death rate by a different color. I hope it is visible. Is that color visible? Okay. Let me try to use a different color here. Death rate. So in the first stage of society, the death rate is also very high. Obviously, no facilities are there. So death rate will also be very high. Slowly and steadily, the number of people dying, that reduces, because when you reach the second stage, the population or the society has developed somewhat, that you have the presence of medical facilities now. So once the medical facilities start being available, that is where you will have the population being able to survive for a longer duration. They survive for a longer duration, they are able to live out for a longer time period. So that is where you'll find that initially, as the society progresses, the death rate declines significantly. And then, with the further development, the death rate then stagnates at a lower portion where it continues. Okay. What about the birth rate? Will the birth rate also immediately decline? Do you think the birth rate will also immediately decline? No. Birth rate doesn't decline immediately, because generally it takes a generation or more for people to see with their own eyes that all their brothers and sisters, they have grown up healthy individuals. Once they are sure that, okay, even if we have two kids or one kid, that can grow into a healthy adult or a healthy individual, only after one or two generations will you observe the decline in population. If you take a look at your own family and your own family setup, invariably, on an average, you will come across the fact that at the time of your grandparents, or even earlier than that, they would have had much more number of kids, and then it would have reduced in your generation. So generally, it takes a couple of generations to induce that change. So the birth rate holds consistent during the second phase almost, and then initiates a decline. And then it stagnates to a lower portion. Then we come across the aspect of population growth. Population growth. Now, in the first stage, birth rate and death rate both are very high. What do you think will be the population growth in that time? It will be very low, isn't it? Because the number of people dying is also very high. So population growth in the first stage will be very, very low. Then in the second stage, observe that the death rate has started declining, birth rate is still very high. So in the second stage, you will observe an exponential growth of population. exponential growth of population will be experienced. Then comes the third stage, where the birth rate has also started declining. Death rate is already very low, but still you have more number of people being added every year. So still the population will grow, but at a lower rate. Observe the curve of population has changed, and eventually it will stagnate. So that is how every society indicates a change in terms of birth rate, death rate, and population growth. Every society comes from the first stage eventually, where, for example, right now, for the first stage, you can take the case of certain African countries, sub-Saharan region, for example, take the case of Sudan, right? That can be an example there. Now, when we talk about second stage, that is where the death rate has significantly declined. So you can take the case of, let's say, Bangladesh, Pakistan in that case, right? Even Nigeria can be taken as an example in this case. Then the third stage, this is where you put countries like India. We are into the third stage. And then you have fourth stage, where you have the developed nations, right? European regions. Even China has entered that list. Western Europe, etc. So this is how every society, yes, US can also be put under the fourth stage. So this is how every society ends up indicating a change, a distinct change in population behavior, demographic conditions as you transition from a low base, low developed country to a well developed country. This is the transition that you come across. Okay. Then we come across what is referred to as a population pyramid. Population pyramid basically ends up representing the change in population or the dimension of populations in terms of male and female population at each and every age group. So at each and every age group, that is 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, what is the proportion of male population? What is the proportion of female population? That gives you an idea about the age-sex ratio of the entire population. So that is what is also referred to as age-sex pyramid, or in general, what is referred and regarded to as population pyramid. Okay, for example, just by taking a look at the population pyramid, you get an idea whether a region will experience an increase in population in the coming years, or stagnation of population in the coming years, or decline in population in the coming years. For example, take the case of the first image. Here you observe a kind of a triangle. That means what? People in the lower age group are very high in numbers, be it male or female. People in the lower age group, they are very high in number. And then these people will grow up. So that means it is a youthful population which will expand in future. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, they come under this category. Then you have aging population. That is large number of population in the working age group. Working age group, if it has large number of people, means once they grow old, they won't be in the service anymore. So overall, that means over a period of time, you will have large number of older population. Take the case of, for example, if you take the case of China, China very much comes and falls under the category of aging population, right? So that is the case of aging population. Then aged population, population which has already aged. So there you will find that significant proportion of population in the late working age group, that is 40 to 50, 50 to 60, and also a lot of people beyond 60. That is the aged population. Example, here you will have India. Here take the case of China. And here the example is Japan. Japan has got significant proportion of aged population, which is prevalent, which is living in that area. So that is why Population pyramid gives you an idea not only about the properties of any particular population group, but also gives you an idea about what is going to happen in the coming days, in the near future, so that a country can always end up devising a policy for the aspect, right? It can always end up devising a kind of a suitable policy for that. That if, let's say, you have an aging population, you need to get your medical services in order, because the aged population does require a lot of medical care. You need to get your pension services in order. So that is where, for example, if you have a youthful population, you need to be able to generate as many jobs as possible, right? So that is basically the aspect of age sex pyramid or population pyramid. Then we come across the human settlements. Now, ever since the advent of agriculture, we have had settlements in various different areas. Now, the settlements can be characterized as compact or nucleated settlement. When you have a large section of population restricted to a small area, you have compact or nucleated settlement. And when you have the set of population, let's say distributed, dispersed due to hilly terrain, etc., that is the dispersed settlement. So this is generally to be observed in the plain regions. And this is generally to be observed in the hilly areas. Okay, dispersed settlement. So each of them will have their own individual occupation that they will work upon. Whereas in compact settlement, you will find many people having the same set of occupation. They will carry the same work. They will share the same resources. They will go to the same place of worship. Everything will be shared in the case of compact or nucleated settlement. But in dispersed, it will oftentimes be distributed. Now, here also, you have a further categorization of settlement as rural settlement as well as urban settlement. So when we talk about the rural settlement, here majority of the people would be engaged in primary sector activities like agriculture, fishing, etc. So primary activities, they are dominant in the case of the rural settlement. And rural settlement also depends on certain factors. For example, water supply. Without water, generally you will not find settlements to exist. Water supply is essential. Other than that, for example, availability of fertile land. Fertility of land is also very essential, also very relevant, also very important. Then, for example, upland. Upland means what? A region which is present slightly in an elevated portion. That is referred to as an upland. Now, that upland, that provides natural defense. And natural defense is provided against whom? China and Pakistan? No. That natural defense is provided against maybe neighboring clans, wild animals, floods, all of that. That is why you would observe that, and that is why I want you to relate history with geography significantly, because much of the history is driven straight out of the geographical realities. You would have observed that in ancient India, you would have studied that the seat of power was in Patliputra in Magad, right? It shifted to around Kannauj around 6th century AD. And after that, Kannauj started being the center of power. Why only Kannauj was chosen? Why not any other place in the northern plains? That is because Kannauj is situated, is a plain region on an upland. So that provided natural benefits against floods, natural benefits for defense. So that is how. So that is why when you study history now, I hope you study that with that perspective. Okay. Now, urban settlement. Urban settlement, basically, you have a classification of urban settlement based on the population, the number of people living in an area, and also based on the activities that they pursue. In the case of urban areas, you will come across the fact that majority of the people, they carry out secondary or tertiary activities. You will not come across a scenario where somebody living near Connaught Place in Delhi tells you that their main occupation is farming and they will go into the center of Connaught Place and they will start digging the land. No. Similarly, Will you come across an individual, let's say in the region of Bandra Kurla complex in Delhi, in Mumbai, and they will tell you that my main primary activity is agriculture? No. So around 70 to 75% of the population would be engaged in secondary or tertiary activities in the urban settlement. Then you also have the classification of urban settlements done on the basis of the number of people living there and also the density of population living in an area. So you have different requirements. For example, in United States, if 2,500 people live in an area, urban settlement. In India, more than 5,000 people living in an area, urban settlement. In Japan, more than 30,000 people, if they live in an area, only then an urban settlement, because the population density is very high. But to add on to that, in India, if you have a density of 400 people or more per square kilometer in a region, only then it is regarded as an urban settlement. Okay. So if you take a look at the urban areas across the country, you will find that there are many urban areas, but most of them concentrated around larger places and larger cities of industrial production or industrial activities. For example, if you take a look at the population density, let's say in Delhi NCR alone, in Delhi, not the entire NCR, in Delhi, the average population density is more than 10,000 people per square kilometer. Right? So that gives you an idea about how distinct or how skewed the population distribution is. Now, these urban areas, basically, they have been increasing significantly. In 1991 census, you had 3,351 urban settlements. That increased to around 8,000 by 2011. And there is a good probability, a good chance that it would increase to 10,000 plus when you have the release of the next census, which will be carried out after the election year. So that is how urban settlements have been increasing. But the urban settlements, they also face their own set of unique problems. If you take a look at the problems faced by urban settlement, that is almost consistent across the globe. First of all, when people migrate to the urban areas, there is an acute shortage of housing. So a migrant will not be able to afford the house because there is lack of affordable housing. So the migrants, they move around the slums. And in the slums, you have very poor conditions of sanitation, hygiene, or in general, healthcare, etc. The resources which are required to live, that is not something which is easily available in these slums. Then you have other economic problem. Now, in the urban area, presently in many of the developing nations, you will find that large number of people, they will flock to the urban area. They will come to the urban area. And there you have an oversupply of labor. So for the same job, you have 6 people who are going to apply for the same job. So the person who will get the job, maybe 2 to 3 people will get the same job. The job which could be done by one person, maybe is distributed to 2 to 3 people. Now, what will be the income level for each of them? Each of them will be earning very less. If there would have been, let's say, 2 applicants and one would have been selected, that person would have been paid handsomely. But now you have so many applicants for the same piece of job. So level of income reduces. Oversupply of labor, that basically means level of income reduces. And once the level of income reduces, means socio-economic impacts will be observed. For example, poor living standards. For example, poor education. Educational standards. For example, poor access to healthcare. Healthcare. All of these will be outcome of the labor force which is increasingly flocking to the urban areas in order to find an economic opportunity, but they are not getting that. So that will be the outcome of it. Then you have the environmental problems. What are the environmental problems? So when you have increased amount of settlement in an urban area, you have the issues such as pollution, different types of pollution, air, water, noise pollution. Air pollution causes increased amount of heating. So you have also got urban heat island impact. Urban heat island is created. Other than that, as more and more people they live in the floodplains in the urban areas across the wetlands, etc., they stop or the settlement in a way interrupts the water flow, and that brings about, let's say, urban floods. Urban floods are caused by the process in the process. So all these are the basic issues faced across the developing countries. And for this, just take an eye out of your house. Look around you. North to south, east to west, the entire country is facing this problem to varying degrees. Regardless of how generous and great your city is, regardless of how generous or great your state is, you would have had some sections of that city, some sections of the population that is facing this problem. The problem is that we are not aware about that population. We think that, okay, in my city, everything is fine. Rest of the country, things are going bad. In my state, everything is fine. Rest of the country, everything is going bad. But that is not the case. Everywhere, the problem is same. From the north to the south to east to the west, every state is almost facing the similar set of problems. So observe the region around you. And please never get blinded by that kind of a prejudiced eye, right? So that prejudice will come naturally, but try to shed that prejudice. Okay, that prejudice should be formed in the would take the should take the form in the form of pride. It should not morph itself into the case of over arrogance and over pride. So look at your areas, you will get much more better examples, and much more other problems will come into your mind. Now we take a look at the transport. Very briefly, we'll take a look at it because mostly transport is going to be relevant from your perspective of current affairs. So when we talk about transport, it covers the portion of not only the transportarial arteries, that is the highways, the railway tracks, etc. Not only they will be covered, but also the vehicles or the train network plying on them, and also the organization, for example, NHAI, Indian Railways. That entire system together is referred to as transportation system. Now, it can be by land, river, or land, water, air. So here, we'll take a look at few of the salient features of transport, starting with the road transport. Now, when we talk about roads, we have different types of roads in the country. So, for example, national highways. Now, national highways, they connect two different cities or prominent cities across the country. So, they will end up moving through different states. So, they will provide you a facility of interstate travel. When you want to travel from one state to another, you will get that facility from national highways. Then, for example, state highways. Now, when you talk about state highways, they will connect a couple of cities within the state itself, the major cities within the state. Then you have district roads. So these district roads, they connect the district headquarters. Whichever place you are living in, it will have a district headquarter. And it will also have many small suburbs, many blocks, talukas, which are present. So that connectivity is provided by district roads. And then you have rural roads, which connect two different rural areas together. You would have heard about the Pradhan Mantri Gram Sadak Yojana. It connects different rural areas together. So these are the various different types of roads. And you have other road network as well. And this includes the strategic border roads, strategic border roads, international highways. For example, Indo-Myanmar Thailand highway, which is being developed, international highways, they will also be included in that. So these are basically the various different aspects that you come across in terms of roads. They connect various areas of settlement in general, right? Now, when we talk about national highways, they are one of the most arterial networks across the country. They end up handling close to around 40% of the overall road traffic. But they represent only around 2% of the road area. They handle 40% of the traffic in only 2% of the road area. That leads to significant amount of jams, but also large number of accidents. Every year in India, we end up losing close to around 1.5 lakh people every year due to road accidents. Think about it. Since the time of coronavirus, the number of people that we have lost due to COVID pandemic, we have lost almost 10 times that number or even more in the past decade due to only road accidents. Now, road accidents are caused because of various issues. You have sometimes the faulty designs of the roads. You have, in certain cases, overcapacity on the roads. But significantly, the portion which is relevant is lack of traffic awareness. Many of the people, they are not even aware that the divider lines that you see painted on the road, now those lines, they give you an indication that where is an overtaking point in the road, and those lines also give you an idea where you should never overtake. You would have observed in the roads, on the sides of the roads, you would have observed in between, it is painted like this. Now, as you move across the national highway, you will come across a certain stretch which is continuous, means no overtaking is allowed there. Lane discipline is something which is a comedy in our country, right? Especially if, let's say, you get an opportunity to travel by Haryana roadways, Rajasthan roadways, or maybe even for that matter, Karnataka roadways. You get an experience of a lifetime where by the time that you get down of the bus or any of that mode of transport, you thank God Almighty that you have survived. So from first lane to fourth lane to third lane to second lane, it is like a video game which is going on. And that is why we have such disastrous accidents which happen. So road accident is a major issue, and that is why you can always expect a question in the mains examination about this. Okay? Now, when we talk about rail transport came in India way back around 1853, when you had the first railway line which was laid between Bombay and Thane at that point of time. Now, rail transport was developed by the British to carry goods from the hinterland to the ports, and from the ports, the finished products to the markets. So the development of rail transport was restricted for that purpose. It ended up coinciding with the passenger movement. But overall, in India, we have a vast network of railway line. Initially, when the railway lines were being developed, you had the distance between the railway lines to be around 0.67 meters, what was also regarded as the narrow gauge. Initially, you had narrow gauge railway lines. Then came the meter gauge, and now what is prevalent is the broad gauge. So this is the modern railway line that you have. Now in India, simultaneously, you will find that the presence of broad gauge is also there, presence of narrow gauge is also there, and presence of meter gauge is also there. Narrow gauge you will still find in the hill station somewhere. For example, if you want to go from Kunnur to Uti or Mettupalayam to Uti, there you will find the narrow gauge. Darjeeling, you will find narrow gauge. For example, in Shimla, you will find narrow gauge. So there may be for touristic purposes. Meter gauge is still operational in some parts. Now, this brings about inefficiency because the same railway coaches and the same engines, they cannot operate on meter and narrow gauges. For that you will require a different bogie altogether, a different coach altogether. So that is why Indian Railways had initiated what was referred to as Project Unigauge. This was a project which was initiated to convert all the railway lines across the country into the same gauge length, into the same gauge type. Now, this was the project which was initiated in the early 90s. And I'm very proud to tell you and to inform you that this project is still functional. This project has still not been completed. Deadlines have been pushed endlessly. And now, the final goal which has been set is that by 2025 or somewhere around that, we will achieve a kind of a uni gauge to attain a kind of a greater efficiency. So that is the aspect of the basics of rail transport. Then when we come to water transport is again classified into two types. You have the oceanic waterways carried out from the port areas, and then you have the inland waterways. Inland waterways, which is basically moving from the region of the various different rivers, canals, etc. Now, inland waterways has got a huge amount of prospect for development. When you talk about inland waterways, India for a long period of time had got only around 6 national waterway network which was present. Now this has been increased to around 111 national waterways. Ideally, for your examination, you should be aware of the top 5. So National Waterway 1 extends from Haldia to Allahabad in UP. Right? This is National Waterway 1. National Waterway 2, when Brahmaputra enters the plains around Sadia all the way till Dhubri, that is the bordering area between Assam and Bangladesh, National Waterway 2. National Waterway 3, Kollam to Kottapuram, that is the West Coast Canal, that will be National Waterway 3. And then National Waterway 4, that is across the Godavari Krishna canals. So these basic national waterways, they will ensure the movement of people, material, trade significantly to happen. Now, when trade happens from waterways, it is a very cheap process. That is why you will find countries across the world, they are focusing on inland waterways. For example, if you consider, let's say, a country like China, around 7 to 8% of its logistics transport happens through waterways. If you talk about Western Europe, almost around 7 to 8% of that happens again through waterways. If you talk about, let's say, the region of United States, again close to 7% of the water transport happens through waterways. So whenever you have the presence of waterways, that always reduces the cost of the product, and that makes your product much more competitive in the international market. So that is why national waterways is a way to go, and improving the transportation systems across these waterways should be carried out. Okay, ideally you should be aware of the top 5, top 6 waterways for the examination. National Waterway 1, here it is indicated, from Allahabad all the way to Haldia or Prayagraj to Haldia. Then Waterway 2, from Sadia to Dhubri. Waterway 3, Kollam to Kottapuram. Then after that 4, across from Puducherry all the way till Kakinada. across the canals which have been built, waterway 5 across the Brahmani delta that you have, and across, and when we talk about national waterway 6, it is proposed to be built across river Barak. Out of this, waterway 1 and waterway 2, significant amount of development of infrastructure has already been carried in the case of national waterway 1 and national waterway 2. But we also have a large coastline with many of these ports. Okay, we have studied in the portion of physiography that western coastal plains is, or western coast is more conducive for ports. So if you take a look here, ideally you should be aware of these major ports at least. So you have the Kandla port, which also happens to be the northernmost port of the country. That is, it is slightly higher that in latitudinal extent as compared to the Haldia port. So it happens to be the northernmost port. Then you have in Mumbai, JNPT. Today a question was asked about JNPT. The question was asked that Vishakhapatnam port has got the highest container handling capacity. It is JNPT which has got the highest container carrying capacity. Then you have Panji and Marmagao in Goa. Then you have Mangalore, which is an oil port. Then you have Kochi, which also serves as a purpose of defense. Then you have Tuticorin. Then you have Chennai port. Then you have Ennore or Kamarajar port, which is registered with a private company. This was also a question which was asked in today. Then you had Vishakhapatnam, Paradeep. Paradeep also has development of an oil refinery in that region. And then you have the Haldia port. These are the ports that you come across in the entirety of the country. And from here, transportation can be carried out for the rest of the world. So these are few of the advantages and the scope of water transport that you come across in India. First of all, you have the increased freight movements which can be carried out, right? The amount of materials which can be transported by freight is very high because in India, still a major chunk is being transported by road, some chunk by rail, and very little by waterways. We have already talked about that how in China, how in Europe and United States, we have more than 7% of the goods being transported by waterways. So the scope is very high. It is very, very cheap. So, for example, in order to transport 1 ton of freight for 1 kilometer, while it will cost you around rupees 2.28 for roadways, it will cost you a simple small sum of rupees 1.1 or 1.2. It is also green. In 1 liter of fuel, you can move 105 tons over water as compared to only 24 tons. So think about it, almost 4.5 times is the amount of weight that you can carry. Now, these ports, they are classified based upon their utility as well. That what is their utility, and based on that, you have the classification. For example, you have the oil ports, which are specialized in handling oil import and export. So in these ports, you will find that from the port area, you have a long pipeline which extends into the sea. And the large ships, very large ships carrying oil, they don't necessarily have to come directly to the coastline. They will berth themselves directly aside that large pipeline and they will empty all the oil that they are carrying. So example of oil port in India, we have what? Mangalore port is an oil port. Then you have ports of call. These are basically the ports where the ships make an intermediary stop in order to refuel and restock the supply. supply before moving forward with the rest of the journey of the journey. For example, you have Colombo port. For example, you even have the Mumbai port. Mumbai port. These are your examples of port of call, where the ships will take a break, and they take a break in order to restock, refuel, and then they will move ahead for their onward journey. Then you have ferry ports. These are for short distance, where ferry movement is done. Ferries, I'm sure if you have not traveled in a ferry, at least you would have seen a ferry. So ferries are these very slow moving large boats where you can drive with your vehicle. Vehicles are parked on one of the stories of that ferry, and then passenger seating is available on the other ferry. They will carry you over that small distance of water body, and then you land there, and then you again move there. For example, across the English Channel, you have on the side of UK, you have the Dover port, and on the side of the France, you have the port of Calais. So people who have to move from UK, let's say, and drive into Europe, they come with their vehicles all the way till Dover port. They bring their vehicles on the ferry, and after that, they simply deboard at Calais when they further move over. So that is a ferry port. And then you have naval port, purely for the purpose of the Navy, purely for the utility of the Navy. For example, here, example, Karwar port. Karwar port across the western seaboard, across the western coastline, immediately to the south of Goa. That is specially a naval base, especially for the various different ships, large ships coming for Navy, right? Aircraft carrier, etc., for ships. So they are berthed at the region of Karwar port. Okay, so these are the basic types of ports that you come across. Okay, ferry port basically is when you have to travel a short distance over a small water body, when you have to cross a small water body. So that is basically a ferry port. So that is where, along with your vehicles, along with the individuals, they are carried over from one region to another. Okay. Then we come across to the portion of maps, where we shall be approaching the maps, what to study in the maps, how to approach maps in general. That is something we are going to cover. So before that, we take a break of 10 minutes, and then we are going to be back for the final session for geography. And that is when we'll have an approach about how to take a look at maps, how to extract maximum from maps in general. Okay. A confirmation about the audio, please, guys. If you're able to hear me out perfectly, kindly confirm. Thank you. So now we come to the portion of maps. Now here in the portion of maps, also understand the approach. Approach is very essential here, guys. Okay, so for the maps, how do you approach when you take a look at these maps? In general, the questions that you will find, which has been asked even in this year in the prelims, that question is largely oriented from the portion of current affairs. Okay, so in general, for your preparation, whenever you carry out the study, always current affairs is something that I'm sure you would be following quite rigorously. Now, in the portion of current affairs, for example, you come across any new area, any new region which is in discussion, immediately ask yourself if you know the exact location of that place. If not, don't hesitate to open up the atlas. Open up the atlas and look at it, that where that region is situated. Okay, that is going to significantly help you expand your idea of the places across. Now, when we talk about the maps, first of all, what you should be approaching is taking a look at the physical map first. Now, with the help of the physical maps, you get an idea about the physical features and the physical properties prevalent across the entirety of the world. Right? You get an idea about where you have the presence of the mountain systems, for example. You get an idea, for example, where is it that you have the water bodies. And then accordingly, after that, once you get an idea, for example, take the case of North America. So once you have an idea about where is it that you have the coastal ranges, where you have the Rocky Mountains, where is it that you have the Mexican plateau in the physical map, then go for the political classification or the political map, the political boundaries of the map. Now, in that way, you will be able to not only understand and finalize that in which area that physical division or that physical property lies, but it also gives you an idea about the aspect of international relations in general. So that is something, or that is an approach which needs to be developed, which needs to be significantly followed also. Okay. Now here, can we use Google Maps? Yes, you can also use Google Maps. The purpose should be that you should be aware about where a particular region is situated. Use any map which is available for you. Now, I will give you the example by citing few of the continents for suppose. So here, if we take the case of North America, you open up the physical map, let's say, of North America. Now there, how is it that you should approach it? First of all, you should take a look at the surrounding water bodies. What are the water bodies surrounding that region? For example, you have Gulf of Mexico here, right? Atlantic Ocean neighbors that. Then you have the Labrador Sea, the region from where the cold Labrador current comes and meets the warm Gulf Stream. Then you have the Davis Strait, Baffin Bay, which is present very close to the Baffin Islands that are present. Then here you have Gulf of Boothia. Okay. Then after that, you have the Beaufort Sea. Then you have the Chukchi Sea. You have the Bering Strait. Right? Bering Strait is the one which provides the delineation of water or delineation of land between North America and Asia. Right? So that is the Bering Strait. It is during the last ice age when it is estimated that this would have been covered with land areas. And with the warming, the rise of water level, which has happened for the few thousand years, now you have water body that is the Bering Strait close to the Bering Sea, which drains in that region. Then furthermore, here you have the Gulf of Alaska, which is prevalent. Here you have the Gulf of California. Okay, so once you have taken a look into the surrounding water bodies, then after that you can delve deeper into the physical classification and the physiographic divisions. For example, you have the old fold mountains in the form of Appalachians, right? immediately to the Piedmont zone of Appalachians, you will have the large Ozark Plateau, which is drained by very large rivers, Missouri and Mississippi drains into Gulf of Mexico, right? Then, for example, here you have the Rocky Mountains which are present. Now, these Rocky Mountains, they will consist of volcanic peaks as well as fold mountains, because this has been created as a result of continent oceanic convergence. Then furthermore, if you move ahead, here you will find the Brooks Range, the Alaska Range. It is in this Alaska Range where you'll come across Mount Denali. The tallest peak in the entirety of North America is Mount Denali at a height of 6,000 meters above sea level. Then furthermore, here you will find the coastal ranges. These will form the youngest fold mountains across the entirety of planet Earth, where the formation of these mountains have happened only around a couple of million years back. Then here you have the Great Plains. These Great Plains, they extend in the significant portion around United States, and this is where a lot of maize is also produced. So significant amount of productivity of maize is carried out. Then you also have the Canadian Shield, right? So Canadian Shield is again similar to the kind of formation that you will observe in the case of Deccan Traps. Here also you have the flood basalt. And then you have the Sierra Madre Occidental and Sierra Madre Oriental. And in between them, you have the Mexican Plateau, very, very significantly rich in mineral resources. Then here you will find the Colorado Plateau, deep canyons, Great Canyon of United States is observed here. Here you will find the region of Sierra Nevada. It is on the leeward side of this that you will find the presence of the Mojave Desert. In United States, Mojave Desert is to be found in this region. Okay, Appalachians, they are very rich in mineral resources. Here you will also find the presence of, for example, 5 lakes which form the boundary region between United States and Canada. And what are those 5 lakes? So you have Lake Huron, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario, right? Lake Superior, Lake Michigan. So these are your 5 lakes. So Lake Superior. Then you have Huron. Then you have Michigan, right? Then you have Erie. And then you have Lake Superior. Superior we have already covered. So you have Lake Ontario. Now, here you will observe that the northern extent of North America is having a significant indentions. You will have the Hudson Bay here. Significant indentions where the land is not regular. And that is a result of the glacial activity which has happened in that area. It is a result of the glacial erosion which has been carried out, which has been happening in that region. Okay. So that is basically about North America. When you follow the similar approach for South America, there you will find the prevalence of Andes all across the western part. Here you will find Mount Aconcagua. The highest peak of South America is going to be Mount Aconcagua. Here you will find right at the coastline, very deep Peru-Chile Trench, which is in existence. Right? And here you will find it is drained by larger rivers like Amazon. So Amazon basin, around the river Amazon, you will find the tropical forests, the rainforests. And these are known by the name selvas. Very good. Here you also have tropical grasslands. Which tropical grassland? Llanos, in the region of Venezuela. This is where Llanos is situated. And you also have Campos in the region of Brazil. You have temperate grassland in the form of pampas in Argentina. Now, this region, that is Chile, is very, very rich in mineral deposits. You have various minerals like zinc, tin, cobalt, copper, that is to be found in the region of Chile. It is here, that is in the region of Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile, where lithium is to be found in significant quantity. So this forms what is referred to as the lithium triangle. What is known as the lithium triangle. The country is very, very rich in lithium deposits. Now, Brazilian highlands themselves, they are very rich in mineral deposits like tin. Okay, so this is also a mineral rich area. Wherever you generally come across the highlands and the older highlands which have underwent a lot of erosion and weathering over a period of time, it is in those areas that these minerals are now getting exposed to the surface. Then after that, when we take a look at Europe, now in the region of Europe, here you have mountains, Scandinavian mountains. That is why these are the regions which are referred to as the Scandinavian nations also. Monica, lithium triangle consists of Bolivia, Argentina, and Chile. These are the three which are covered under lithium triangle. So Scandinavia, for example. So that is why Finland, Norway, and Sweden, they are referred to as Scandinavian nations. Okay. Then here you have the Gulf of Bothnia, the Baltic Sea. So Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, they are referred to as the Baltic nations, the Baltic countries. Then here you have the North Sea, very rich in oil reserve. Significant amount of oil resources are to be found. And it is that oil which is being extracted by the regions around Norway, etc., giving them prosperity. Here, you will also come across there, if you will observe, there is an English channel which separates UK from the rest of Europe. Then here you have the Bay of Biscay. Okay. And here is what is referred to as the Iberian Peninsula. This is referred to as the Iberian Peninsula. Okay. Here, this is divided by a mountain, that is the Pyrenees mountain ranges. Pyrenees are situated in this region, if you will observe on the map. Now, Strait of Gibraltar ends up connecting the Atlantic Ocean with the region of the Mediterranean Sea. Okay. Now here you will find the presence of Alps, another fold mountains in the form of Alps. Then here, Carpathian mountains. Here you will find the Balkan ranges and the Balkan mountains in general. Here you will find the Ural mountain ranges. Then Caucasus mountain range. So these are your various mountain ranges all across Europe. In general, if you take a look at the entire North European plain, that North European plain overall is a kind of a flat land. Many areas are even at a level lower than the sea. So that is why these are the regions which are agriculturally very productive. This is also what is referred to as the wheat granary of the world. So a lot of wheat production takes place in the region of Ukraine, in the region of Russia. That is why it is this region which has been impacted, and due to which you have had a problem due to the Russia-Ukraine war, you have had a problem about wheat grain and wheat transport. Okay. Then this region, ideally France, Germany, Luxembourg, this area that you see, that used to be very rich in coal resources and coal resource in general. But that has been extracted quite significantly out of that area, and that has served as the basis for the development of Western Europe. Coal and iron ore, they are found in increased dominance in this particular region or this particular stretch. Okay, here you have the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov, which is situated in this area. Okay, here is where you have the Aegean Sea, which is considered to be a remnant of the ancient Tethys Sea in itself. So that is the region of Europe. When we talk about Africa, so in Africa, for example, you will have the Sahara Desert, the Great Sahara Desert in the north. And then you will have the Congo River Basin here in this area. Now, this Congo River Basin will have the tropical rainforest. So in between the deserts of Sahara and the Congo River Basin, you have the grassland region in the form of Sahel. Okay, you will have the grassland region, very significantly rich in biodiversity, critical biodiversity. It is here that you will observe the presence of the Ethiopian highlands and the presence of the Great African Rift Valley. It is across this Rift Valley you will find large lakes like Lake Tanganyika, Lake Victoria, and so on, that is to be found in this particular area. Okay, you have a kind of a fault line which runs like this, and here also you have the development of a fault line which is in existence. So that is basically in the northern portion. In the southern portion, you will again come across the very mineral rich Katanga Plateau. Very high in terms of mineral deposits, high amount of minerals, again cobalt, copper, tin, zinc, lead to be found in large quantities. Then Drakensberg is a kind of another escarpment. It is an escarpment of sorts. Here you have the Mozambique Channel, and that is the portion of Madagascar, which at one point of time was associated and attached with the western coast of India. It is here you will find the Lake Victoria, the Namib Desert. It is again a desert created due to the cold currents across the coastline. That is the Beniguela current which moves across here. That is where you have the development of a desert, Kalahari Desert also. Okay, these are the deserts which are in existence around that region. Here you have River Vaal. So this is a kind of an ancient craton, what is also referred to as the Cap Vaal craton. And it also has got its formation long time back, billions of years ago. This Cap Vaal craton has come into existence, has been created. Okay, so develop this approach for all the various regions that you are going to see. Develop this approach of looking at the physical features. Once you have taken a look at the physical features, then come to the main political boundaries. Then it will be much more fruitful. For example, here, if you take the case, here you have River Tigris, which drains here. River Euphrates. It has been the bedrock of the ancient Mesopotamian civilization. Here you have Dastelut, one of the driest areas and the hottest areas across the planet. Here you have Rubal Khali Desert. Okay, then here if you will observe, this is where you have Lake Van. Lake Van is known for what? The most saline water body, or the greatest saline water body that you will find across the planet. That is Lake Van. Now, that is where, observe here, you have the Suez Canal. And this is where you have the Sinai Peninsula. This is the famous Sinai Peninsula, where you have had a lot of conflicts between Israel and its neighbors in general. The various different wars fought through the 60s and the 70s have been for the Sinai Peninsula. It is here that you have the Red Sea. Red Sea has also been created as a result of divergence which has happened here. Here you have the Bab al-Mandeb, again acting as a strait. This is the region of Bab al-Mandeb. Now, it is here that you have the country of Djibouti. Djibouti is the country where a lot of different countries have opened up their armed force bases. China has opened up its base there. The United States already has its base there, right? Here is where you have the Gulf of Aden, and this is what is referred to as the region of Horn of Africa. This is the Horn of Africa. Here you have the Persian Gulf, where you have the significant amount of resources or oil resources which are being transported from the oil-rich regions through the region of the Persian Gulf. They move through the Strait of Hormuz, where you have the very famous Bandar Abbas port, and then they move into Gulf of Oman. So here the type of questions that you will come across is generally going to be in the category of that Bab al-Mandeb connects Red Sea and Gulf of Aden. Strait of Hormuz connects Persian Gulf with Gulf of Oman. These kinds of questions and match the following type is what you come across. Okay, right? Then, for example, Australia, if you take a look at. So in Australia, you have the very vast Victorian Desert, the Great Victorian Desert. It is here that on the eastern coastline, you will have the Great Dividing Range, which is in existence. Here, you have the Great Barrier Reef, significantly rich in coral population, coral reefs, largest coral reef population across the globe. It is here between Australia, Indonesia, and Philippines that the coral population is very high. That is what is also referred to as the Coral Triangle. Roughly around 1/3 of the coral population of the world, warm coral population of the world, will be found in the region of that Coral Triangle. Here you have the Bass Strait. Bass Strait ends up dividing Tasmania with the rest of Australia. Here you have the vast Tasman Sea. Okay, so this is basically about Australia. Now here you will find Lake Erie. Lake Erie North, Lake Erie South. Now during monsoonal rainfall, that becomes a very large lake, a very large water body, which attracts a lot of migratory species, a lot of birds, and a lot of biodiversity in general. It is drained by two major rivers, and that is the River Murray and River Darling. So River Murray and River Darling is something which is very prominent here. That is where the fertile areas are created by the what is referred to as the Murray-Darling Basin. Just like we have the Indo-Gangetic Plains, similarly here you have the Murray-Darling Basin, which is agriculturally very productive. It is in these areas where you have the commercial livestock plus agricultural activities being carried out. Very, very productive. One of the large milk producing areas across the world. Great Dividing Range is a mountain range, Vivek, on the eastern side of the Australian continent. That is the Great Dividing Range. Now, when we talk about India, again, the perspective should be, first of all, take a look at the portion of current affairs. Any Ramsar site, let's suppose, has been in news. Any coastal feature has been in news. Any port city has been in news. Take a look into that. After that, look at the state boundary. Look at the state boundaries. And each of the state, they share their boundary with what different types of states. Take a look at that. Look at the states which are divided by the Tropic of Cancer. Tropic of Cancer states. Look at the states which are covered by the Indian Standard Meridian. So when you take a look at all of these, automatically your understanding for the entirety of the country will be much more sufficient. For example, here, first of all, if you observe, you have certain states like West Bengal, Arunachal Pradesh, which will share the international boundary with three different countries. West Bengal shares its boundary with Bangladesh, Nepal, as well as Bhutan. Arunachal Pradesh shares its boundary with Bhutan, China, as well as Myanmar. So that is something you should be taking a look at. Then Tropic of Cancer passes through how many states? So when we talk about Tropic of Cancer, it passes through Gujarat, Rajasthan, for some part, it crosses Rajasthan as well, here. Then Madhya Pradesh, then Chhattisgarh, then Jharkhand, then West Bengal, then Tripura, and then finally Mizoram. So in total, 8 states are crossed by the Tropic of Cancer. Now, which are the major cities nearby? For example, here observe Gandhinagar is situated very close by. Ranchi is situated almost on the Tropic of Cancer, right? So that is something that you have to take a look. Slowly and steadily, it will come. It won't happen overnight, guys. That is why I will always advise you that look at the atlas frequently, at least on a weekly basis. You should be taking a look at the atlas. At least, if nothing, Indian map. Because Indian map, we understand much better. In the case of the world map, I'm sure for many of you or for many of us, the various different countries of the world is also not something which is very clear. Right? So please don't be dependent that I will finally get one list. That list I will ratify and my work will be done. No. What if in the mains question you have an answer which has to be written about where the location of these countries need to be factored in? What will you do then? So that is why please take a look at it long term. And always when you take a look at the map, slowly and steadily explore the areas around. For example, the Himalayan ranges we have discussed in great detail. So where is it that you have the Nanga Parbat? Where is it that you have Namcha Barwa? It is in these areas where the Himalayan ranges, they experience a kind of a syntaxial bend. They go for a syntaxial bend. You have the Trans-Himalayan ranges in the form of Kailash, Zaskar, Ladakh, and Karakoram. These are your 4 Trans-Himalayan ranges which are present, isn't it? Now, once you have understood that, after that, go for a further subclassification. For example, in Arunachal Pradesh and the northeastern region in general, you have the Garo, Khasi, and Jayantia ranges, which are very much a part of the Peninsular Plateau system. Then, for example, here you will find Dafla, Miri, Abor, Mishmi, Patkai Bum, Naga Hills, Lushai or Mizo Hills, Mikir and Barel ranges. So all these are the ranges that you find in the northeastern states. So here you have to be aware that Mikir and Barel, they lie in Assam. Dafla, Miri, Mishmi, and Abor, they lie in Arunachal. Patkai Bum extends all the way from Arunachal into the slight regions of Nagaland. You have the Naga Hills, then you have the Lushai Hills. After that, take a look at the central portion of India. Now, while covering the portion of the area of, let's say, the physiographic division, we have covered it sufficiently that Garjat Hills, they have been created as a result of convergence between the Bastar Plateau and Bastar Craton and the Chota Nagpur Craton. We have looked at that fact. So then look at the portion of Bastar, Chota Nagpur Plateau, Hazaribagh Plateau, right? You have the Kaimur Hills. You have the ever-extensive Vindhya ranges and the Satpura ranges. Mahadev, Gavilgarh, Ajanta, Maikal ranges are also to be present. Here you have the Dandakaranya, the forested area of Dandakaranya, right? Here is where you have the Bundelkhand region. It is here that you will find the Baghelkhand in between. Some part extending into Chhattisgarh, some part extending into Madhya Pradesh. Then here you have the Malwa Plateau, rich in black soil deposits. Then Ajanta Satmala, Balaghat, Harishchandra, and the Sahyadris in the form of Western Ghats. Now, Western Ghats are almost continuous. So what you can do is, you can take the case of the Eastern Ghats, because there you will have Nalamala, Palakonda, Javadi, Shevroy, Nilgiri, Anamalai. These are the ranges that you will come across in the region of Eastern Ghats in general. Okay, so that is basically how you have to cover it. And in order to retain that, Ideally, I would ask you to take a blank piece of map and then try to draw in those areas. Okay, that will improve your level of understanding. That will augment your level of understanding significantly. Nilgiris are considered to be the confluence of Eastern and the Western Ghats. Okay. Then we have, basically, see, if you have to consider Nilgiri, never consider them as Eastern Ghats portion. Significantly in the Western Ghats, some portion of the Nilgiris, they will further move ahead and merge with the Eastern Ghats, the lower portion of Eastern Ghats. But for all considerations, consider it for the Western Ghat portion. Then the passes, the mountain passes. So the mountain passes, for example, the Karakoram Pass. Now, Karakoram Pass has got a motorable highway passing through that since the 1960s. And this is the region which connects the Xinjiang region of China to the region of Pakistan, the Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, and eventually enters into Pakistan and reaches up till the port of Gwadar, where the China-Pakistan economic corridor is being constructed. Then you have the Pir Panjal Pass. That provided the easiest passable route between Jammu and Srinagar. But this Pir Panjal Pass now lies in the portion of Pakistan-occupied Kashmir, so is not utilized significantly. You have the Banihal Pass, which provides all-weather connectivity between Jammu and Srinagar. It is here that you have the very famous Jawahar Tunnel, which provides that all-weather connectivity. You have the Zojila Pass. This is being constructed at record pace in order to provide all-weather connectivity between Srinagar to Leh Ladakh. In order to have the force deployment, the force reserves, etc., they can be deployed. That is why you have the Zojila Pass. Then you have the Shipkila Pass. Shipkila Pass provides connectivity between India and Tibet. And it is through Shipkila Pass that river Satluj enters into India. It enters through the region of Shipkila Pass. Traditionally, also, Shipkila Pass has provided as a kind of a route for transit between and cultural exchanges, people to people connect between India and Tibet. That is why a lot of Tibetan refugees, they entered through the Shipkila Pass into the region of Himachal Pradesh. Now, in Uttarakhand, you have the Niti, Mana, and Lipu Lake Pass. Lipu Lake Pass is present at a tri-junction between India, Nepal, and China. That is where Lipu Lake Pass is situated. Here you have the Nathula, the Jelepla, and then further in the east you have the Dihang, Dihu, Pangsau Pass, which again is not at a very great height, but which provides people to people connect in that region. Then again you have few of the other one. For example, here you have the Rohtang Pass. It is close to the Rohtang Pass where you will find the origin of river. Which river originates close to the Rohtang Pass? Find it out. We have a couple of rivers of Indus River Basin which originates very close to Rohtang Pass. No, it is not Jhelum. It is Beas. Beas originates very close to the Rohtang Pass. It is at this Rohtang Pass where you have the construction of that Atal Tunnel, which has been able to provide a very easy connectivity. Rohtang is in the local language means a pile of dead bodies. So that is where Rohtang Pass is very infamous for indicating very treacherous conditions. The conditions would change drastically. Suddenly, the conditions would indicate a kind of a change. Here you have the Mana Pass. And look here, you have the gaps in the Western Ghats, Thal Ghat. Thal Ghat provides connectivity between Bombay and Nashik. And it also allows the movement and passage of moist and moisture carrying winds from the Arabian Sea, which can bring rainfall in the region of Nashik. That is why, despite being on the leeward side of the Western Ghats, Nashik experiences good conditions of climate and weather. Then you have Bhor Ghat. Bhor Ghat provides connectivity between Mumbai and Pune and makes the weather in Pune also very tolerable. Then you have the Pal Ghat and the Shenkota Gap. That allows the movement of winds to bring rainfall in the western portion of Tamil Nadu. It connects Madurai to Kottayam and so on. So that is where the gaps in Western Ghats, they provide the much needed connectivity. Then take a look at the islands that we have. So for example, in the case of Andaman Nicobar, UPSC had once asked a question that what is it that the 10-degree channel does? So 10-degree channel, why is it named as 10-degree channel? Because it is the 10-degree north latitude which passes through here. Here you will find to the north, the Andaman group of islands, to the south, the Nicobar group of islands. It is here where the southernmost point of India, that is Indira Point, lies here. It is here that you have the Great Nicobar Island, where the Great Nicobar project is being implemented. Okay. Now, here you will observe the presence of the Barren Islands, the only active volcano in India. Then here you have the North Sentinel Island. North Sentinel Island was very much in discussion 3 to 4 years back because you had an American missionary trying to reach that island to carry out religious conversion of the tribal people that were found in that area, but the tribals killed him out. So that is where the North Sentinel Island is situated. Then you have the Duncan Passage, which separates the region of Andaman with Little Andaman in general. Okay, this is basically about Andaman Nicobar. And then you have the ports that we have already taken a look into. Across the eastern coastline, you will find Vishakhapatnam and Tuticorin to be the deep water ports. And here, Kamrajar port is the only private-owned major port, in the sense that it is not the only private-owned port, but it is registered under the Companies Act. Rest of the port that you will observe, they are registered under the Port Trust Act, right? So here, Kandla port is present. It is the northernmost port. So all these ports also, you should be aware. Now these ports are not very large in number, 12 in number. So always take a look at these ports in general. Okay. Now, these are your major river storage systems that you have. But here also, I would suggest to you, recommend to you, please don't end up learning each and every of them. Only the portions which are found to be relevant for current affairs, which are found to have a mention in current affairs, that is the only one that you have to take a look for. Blue and red color in the case of the port represents the major and the minor ports. The red ones are the major ports. The blue ones are the minor ports which are prevalent. Okay. So this is the mineral distribution. But mineral distribution also, I would urge you, kindly look at the portion of the physiography and physiographic division. That should be enough to give you an idea about what kind of minerals are to be found in which part of the country. Okay, follow that kind of an approach. Okay, any doubts which are prevalent? Any of you? Any kind of doubts that we have had? So that basically marks the end of the journey. That basically marks the end of the module. And that basically marks the end of the entire discussion for geography, which we have been having for around a month and a half. And again, I would urge you that kindly revise the portions as soon as possible. As soon as possible, try to revise these portions. Try to get these portions fresh in your memory. And overall, please understand that from the very initial days when we were covering the portion of latitude, longitude, to the portion of the complex areas of climatology, to the concepts of Indian geography, we have covered everything which is essential for the examination, be it the portion of world geography, be it the portion of Indian geography, be it the portion of mineral distribution. We have covered it all. So please don't end up exploring many more different resources, any place. For example, in Indian geography, for example, particularly in economic geography, if you have to further extensively research in those areas or carry out further studies, I would suggest to you, just open up the tablet videos. even that is more than sufficient. There also you will come across few of the other industries discussed in slightly greater detail. That will also suffice. In the tablet videos, you will also come across the discussion of the previous year mains type questions. You have a separate portion of module through maps also. Okay, so please do go through it, and please understand the basics that we have covered. Revising it as much as possible is only going to enrich your information and knowledge. Other than that, always feel free to get in touch. Any issues that you have in your preparation, in your strategy, feel free to get in touch. You will have my mail ID. Okay. So feel free to get in touch. That will be all from my side. That is where we'll restrict the discussion for the weekend session of geography. Till we meet again, all the very best. Very, very humble gratitude for all the kind words that you have basically showered upon. So that is where I'll end the discussion here. And till we meet again, all the best for your preparation. Just ensure that if you stick to the basics, it will be much more rewarding in the long run. Any issues that you face, any problems that you face, don't hesitate to reach out. That will be all from my side. Thank you. Goodbye. Take care and all the best.